Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in. I'm Ahmed, Senior Content Producer for Mining Indaba 2024. As we continue looking at July's theme of tech and traceability, the missing link, we're excited to present an exclusive new interview with Messner de Latour, Senior Manager, Responsible Sourcing, Traceability and Minerals Integrity at Microsoft. Speaking to our Head of Content, Laura Cornish, this interview will delve into the intersection of technology and mining, how companies like Microsoft ensure the sustainable and responsible extraction of minerals utilized within its products through end-to-end traceability and enhanced due diligence, and how getting closer to the supply chain is the key to ultimately empowering all through technology. Stay tuned for more digital diaries coming soon, and be sure to let us know your thoughts below. Take a look.
JJ, it is so wonderful to have you join me. Thanks so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So JJ, I always think it's important to start an interview by contextualizing what we're talking about. And we're talking technology, and technology is a lot of things to a lot of different people and into industry as well. And, you know, in mining 10 years ago, we weren't even thinking about technology, but that's obviously changed. And we're really talking about it a lot today. And in this particular interview, we're not talking about equipment technologies, but more sophisticated system technologies, and also the importance of connecting the upstream and the downstream industries together. So, JJ, in light of that whole introduction, tell me what, in your view, is the actual today link between technology and the mining industry?
No, Laura, I think that's a good setup. And I would say that there's really a couple of different ways of looking at it. I mean, one is to think about really the bread and butter of what technology companies are really able to provide to the mining sector. I mean, let's acknowledge the fact that we are at the very beginning of a new technological revolution, the green revolution, and this is going to require the extraction of significantly more materials than we've seen really throughout human history. And that is going to need to be done in a sustainable and responsible and also efficient way. And I think that where technology providers are really able to be, strong partners for the mining industry in the future is really providing the technology to enable the ability to reach those objectives, whether it be through digital transformation in the mining sector, whether it be through cloud computing, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. I mean, there's a number of different technologies that really underpin the ability of mining companies to be able to scale up the production that is going to be necessary to fuel the green revolution, but at the same time to be able to do it in that fashion that, as I say, is responsible, sustainable, and is also at the same time efficient. But what I would also add is the other way of looking at it as well is what we often forget is that technology, we may think of as something that is, in the cloud. It is all around us, but it has to live somewhere, and that somewhere is on computers and servers that all themselves have within them and require for their functioning the very materials that the mining companies are extracting. So the technology sector is in many ways both a provider and also a customer. And insofar as we're a customer, we also have a significant interest in how sustainably or responsibly the minerals in our own products are extracted. And I think that moving forward, there is not only going to be the opportunity for the technology sector to bring those capabilities that I mentioned to the mining sector, but there's also going to be the need, but also opportunity for the mining sector and the downstream technology sector to engage much more closely on those conversations about how we ensure the responsible and sustainable extraction of those materials, and how we do things like end-to-end traceability and enhanced due diligence and things like that, so we can prove to our own stakeholders that we're responsible partners in that evolution.
JJ, you've hit the nail on the head there in the end about the transparency element and wanting to have an active involvement or understanding of that from the mining industry. So thanks for that clarity, and it's definitely a conversation we want to have more of at Mining Indaba. But feeding on from that green critical minerals element that you mentioned earlier on, I mean, it's needed for a global energy revolution. Mining is obviously a part of that. How, JJ, do global technology providers consider Africa to be a continent that can contribute to that revolution? Do you think Africa has a role to play?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, just given the size and scope of the green revolution and the demand for materials that is going to be necessary, I think all geographies that are mineral rich will have a significant role to play. Africa in particular, as being a significant source of some of the most critical minerals, I think will be front and center of this revolution. And I think for the technology sector, we want to be, there is an intention to be, responsible partners in that evolution. And, to be clear that in terms of how we ourselves as a sector use minerals in our products, use the metals in our products, generally, the downstream companies like technology companies, electric vehicle companies tend not to directly source the materials directly from a mine. It will often enter our supply chain way further beyond where we have direct contracts with suppliers. And so it is our suppliers who who tend to be the ones who are sourcing the materials. But that gives us an imperative to understand what that supply chain is and to be able to make those linkages and hopefully to forge a path where we can better identify where specifically the metals are coming from, engage with the companies who are extracting those metals, and collectively move towards a model that is not only extracting the materials that are needed for the green revolution, but making sure that communities who are impacted by mining are beneficiaries themselves. We should not be leaving people behind as part of this green revolution. And so that's why I think it's important for us to be able to make those linkages, support communities, and also make sure that as I alluded to before, that the materials in our products are sourced responsibly and sustainably. And I think pursuing certifications, like, for example, the initiative for responsible mining assurance as an industry standard, will be really important for downstream actors to be able to demonstrate that we are responsible actors and that communities are benefiting, or at the very least, not being adversely impacted by the extraction of raw materials.
And JJ, naturally, these elements of importance to you, communities and their rights, obviously extends into Africa. Are these things that are top of mind when we have these conversations about doing business with Africa, understanding that they're not directly associated with Microsoft, but indirectly down the chain?
Absolutely. And I think from the perspective of major brands, it is not just what a brand's interests are. Those interests are driven by a brand's own stakeholders, whether they be customers, whether they be investors, whether they be external stakeholders who have a significant perspective. Think about, as a customer, when you purchase a major item like a computer or a phone or a car, hopefully, and I think this is true, I think many consumers want to have some sort of certainty that they are being responsible in their purchases, that by virtue of having the phone in their pocket, the computer on their desk, the car in their driveway, that they are not contributing to harm elsewhere in the world. And I think that intention from consumers, for example, is a major driver for companies in the technology sector, because at the end of the day, we want to empower the world. We don't want to disempower any communities that may be impacted by what the sector is trying to do on a larger scale. So from that perspective, I would highlight where that imperative is coming from. But I think that there is real opportunity because ultimately, when it comes to empowering the world through the technology that we produce, I think we all want to make sure that everybody wins and nobody is left behind.
Such strong messaging, JJ, but so important for the mining industry to hear and to embrace and to acknowledge. I just want to touch a little bit more on the topic of traceability. It's a word you've used before, and it's kind of filtered through our conversation as we've gone, but obviously it's really important. What does traceability specifically mean from a technology point of view?
Traceability from, well, I'd say not only from a technology point of view, but any manufacturing supply chain point of view, is really being able to fundamentally understand the provenance and journey of the materials and the components within a product from end to end, from the extraction of the raw materials through to the consumer. And I would argue that even further from the consumer to end of life, it's really becoming much more of a circular proposition. But traceability is a significant undertaking to understand who the various actors are in the supply chain at every level, the manner in which they are either extracting the materials or adding value along the way, and what the attributes of each stage of the supply chain are. How communities are, for example, being impacted, how the environment is being impacted, what the carbon emissions are at every stage of the supply chain. These are areas where, as downstream purchasers, companies are really hoping, indeed needing, to get greater clarity. And in that sense, every supply chain actor is a partner here. And traceability is going to fundamentally rely on data, of course, to be able to understand the provenance and journey of materials, and to be able to understand the attributes of responsible sourcing or sustainable sourcing. But even more fundamental than that is going to be very much relationship based, because much of this data already exists, but to ensure that there is adequate trust to be able to share that data between supply chain actors, there's going to need to be pretty deep engagement. And I think that again is a real opportunity for mining companies and the downstream to really be able to forge those partnerships. I mentioned a moment ago about the need for certifications and the need for being able to demonstrate that mined materials are extracted in a responsible and sustainable way. And I think insofar as downstream purchasers are able to trace their supply chains back to specific mines, I think that is going to create a real so what for the mining sector. It's going to bring value to those certifications. It's going to bring value to the work that responsible mining companies put into ensuring that local communities are not adversely impacted, to ensuring that the environment is not adversely impacted. And I think insofar as that becomes a basis for differentiation within the supply chain, it's my hope that makes things like IRMA certification even more meaningful for mining companies, and brings the real value that it's their customers that are asking for this. It's their customers that are putting a value on this. And I think that's where there'll be hopefully a real evolution within the supply chain and within the mining sector and specifically.
JJ, fantastic. And you've just reiterated and enforced the need for upstream and downstream to engage together and find workable solutions that appeal to the average human citizen ultimately at the end of the day. I want to end our chat today, JJ, with a slightly alternative question, and one that really talks to the theme that we're looking at approaching for Mining Indaba 24, which is around disruption. So from your perspective, JJ, what disruptive technologies do you believe the mining industry needs to adopt and embrace to truly feel the impact that technology actually has to offer?
That's a great question. And I think that there's plenty of disruptive technology that is just becoming available or is really on the verge of scaling up that can really bring enormous value to the mining sector. A couple that I would highlight is, the Internet of Things and remote sensing to be able to better track, activities within a mining operation, to be able to ensure, greater efficiency at that very granular level. I would say also that that artificial intelligence, I think, is really at the dawn of a new revolution for how it can, impact and improve not just mining operations, but manufacturing and extraction more broadly. And these all present an enormous amount of promise. And I think that they all build up to many of the objectives that downstream purchasers in the technology sector themselves prioritize, as things like greater carbon efficiency, lessened impacts on the natural environment, reducing impacts on local communities. I think that we're at a really promising, encouraging junction where not only can we improve technologically the operations of the mining sector specifically, but in so doing, bring benefit to local communities and to the environment as well. And again, it gets back to my point about creating that environment where everyone wins. And that's really what we want to aim towards.
JJ, it's been a real pleasure and really interesting to have two spectrums of industry that you don't think are connected that actually are, and how priorities are actually aligning and coming together, and we're all heading in the same direction, and how important that is, and how relevant it is to engage on that level. So I appreciate your time, JJ, and giving insight into the technology side and how mining should be thinking about things moving forward. Really appreciate it, JJ.
You're welcome. Thanks, Laura.